Hey guys, it's Chef Andrea and it is Cookbook Corner. So recently we talked about the oldest cookbook in my collection, Ms. Beaton's Every Day. So this week we're going to talk about something a little bit different. We're going to talk about the newest cookbooks in my collection, but I want to be clear that with Ms. Beaton's, we called it the oldest cookbook in my collection. What I was talking about, what I was referring to was the publication date. Remember, we said that that book was published sometime between 1865 and 1890. Publication date questionable based on which run this one actually was. But before 1900, oldest cookbook in my collection based on publication date. This week, we're talking about the newest cookbooks in my collection that actually, we're not talking about publication date because some of these have been around for a little while, but we're talking about the newest concepts in cookbooks, the newest cutting edge food presentation cookbooks in my collection. How about that? And what I'm going to share with you is a little philosophical today and some of my own humble opinion about food presentation. So if that's of interest to you at all, stick around. This is an interesting cookbook corner, and I'm really excited to get to share some of this stuff with you today. So grab a hot beverage, settle in, and let's get talking about cookbooks. Okay, kids, today, not the oldest cookbook in my collection, the newest in the terms of the newest concepts. Let me give you an idea of what I'm talking about. The cookbook that's in my hand that I'm about to show you is the cookbook that came from the restaurant Alinea, which I'm probably mispronouncing, Alinea. And it was the restaurant that was run by head chef Grant Achatz. So let me show you the book. There's Alinea. And this is a super modern cuisine concept. His restaurant was part of the molecular gastronomy kind of thing that was happening in food. Big time. Let's see, right now it's 2021. I guess I could look at the publication date of this. The 2000s were when this kind of molecular gastronomy just went sort of through the roof. It really started earlier than that in Spain with El Bulli, but in America, it kind of rolls in the 2000s. Certainly Thomas Keller from the French Laundry is playing with some level of this concept, this very refined, very scientific, very deconstructed formula of presenting foods in really extremely elegant, very refined ways. It was an interesting time in food, I will say that. It was interesting to watch. And I actually went to one molecular gastronomy based kind of sort of high-end out there presentation style restaurant, which was the Catbird Seat in Nashville, Tennessee. Yeah, Nashville, Tennessee. I'm right about that. And it was a really remarkable and memorable dining experience. I'm going to say that first and foremost. I was trying to see if there's a darn publication date in this book, and I'll be darned, I don't know if there is. If it says when. Well, 2005 is when he opened Alinea. So that tells you we're talking the 2000s, right? So Grant Achatz, a couple things I want to tell you about this book before we get into some of the theories of this type of food. There is an interview available on pbs.org or npr.org. It's Terry Gross interviewing Grant Achatz. And I think that she's interviewed him twice. There's one interview with him while Alinea is still up and running. It has closed, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that in the beginning. Alinea has closed. And my understanding is that what Grant Achatz is doing now are kind of pop-up dinners. He's like traveling around and doing some of these super high-end, fancy dinners. Reservations are required way in advance, but he's closed Alinea down. His interview with Terry Gross is amazing to listen to. So find it and listen to it. He is a very remarkable chef and had a very remarkable story, as many who find their way to success of this level tend to have these just really extremely interesting stories. So I won't get into details about that. I'll let you listen to that with Terry Gross, but it's really interesting. The restaurant itself, my exposure to Alinea came through probably that interview with Terry Gross, just because I happened to listen to her all the time. In my area, she was on from noon to 1, which was usually what time I was driving to work back in the day. So it was often on the radio. But but also Andrew Zimmerman in his show. What was his show? Extreme Eats or something like that. He went to Alinea and dined. And so I got to see some of the food in that program. And he, of course, talks to Grant Achatz during that as well, too. So this is what we're going to be talking about. This book, we're also going to be talking a little bit about another version of this, like, out there, super interesting. These books are so heavy. Modernist Cuisine. If you are not familiar with this compilation of books, this is book 5. I think this set is a 5-set book. It's 5-book set, and then I have another one, I think that's 2 or 3. We'll talk about this in some detail too. Let's talk about why I'm doing this Cookbook Corner. So I have a speaking engagement coming up that I've alluded to in other Cookbook Corners, where I'm going to be talking about cookbook collecting with a group from the Friends of the Library. And we're going to talk about, how to curate your own cookbook collection. We're going to talk about what my cookbook collection looks like at 400 volumes. What are the ones that I love the most? And we're going to talk a little bit about food writing versus cookbook writing, because they actually, for the most part, have been pretty different categories. That's kind of merging a bit these days. We can talk about that some too. But it's funny because this speaking engagement was actually planned a couple of years ago. So I'm going to give you a little history about me. Have something warm to drink, sip up, relax. Here we go. This was planned a couple of years ago, and it was pushed off because of the COVID shutdowns. Our public libraries were closed. Group settings of this nature were closed. So this talk got moved back. And it's so funny to me how the universe kind of does that, doesn't it? Sometimes, because I have to tell you that what I'm about to share with you about some concepts about food presentation and the way that we share food, I was ready to have this conversation in this speech that I'm going to do, but I will tell you that I was a little scared about it. And I've had some time now, because it was pushed back, to really sit with it and determine for myself if I'm brave enough to move forward and share what I want to share. And a couple of things have happened since my original agreeing to this date and considering that I might share my feelings about this. One of the things that happened is that I turned 50. And I don't know if this is a thing that happens with women or if this is just exclusive to me and my experience. First thing I'll share is that, as far as I'm concerned, my life began when I turned 40. I think that for whatever reason, I just didn't have a solid footing until I turned 40. I didn't 100% trust myself or my own instincts. I think I had, like a lot of us do, maybe some esteem issues or some value issues. There was something magic about that number. When I turned 40, I just, one, kind of stopped worrying about what other people thought. And 2, I started to really have faith in myself. Isn't that interesting? I don't know why it was that magic number, but it was. My 40s were a really rocky 10 years for me. I came through a lot of things and learned a lot about who I am. And so by 50, I was like, yeah, I'm all right. I'm liking 50. And I'm kind of digging who I am at 50. 50, if 40 is when I was born, 50 was the birth of the real freedom and belief in myself. So for all the ladies that are watching, if you have any issues about aging or wonder how it's going to be, let me tell you, it's been fantastic. I adore it. So here I am at 50. And what I did at age 48 was I decided that I was going to take on 3 challenges before my 50th birthday. I wanted to take on 3 things that frightened me before I turned 50. I just thought, why not? My 40s were such a time. Can I just carry it on? And so I signed up for a half marathon. I signed up for 2 half marathons, actually. I signed up for 2 half marathons. I signed on to do some off-site and out-of-state teaching engagements. Now, that may not seem that scary considering I'm a culinary instructor and I teach cooking classes. So what's the difference? Well, let me tell you the difference. I am wonderfully comfortable in my own skin, in my own studio. But when you take me outside of these 4 walls, whew, I can start to unravel. And so I said, look, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go do these offsite events. They're in North Carolina. They're in another state. I'm going to have to pack up everything that I need for this, plan it out. It's a kitchen that I'm going to be teaching in sight unseen. I have no idea what will be available. And I'm just going to go for it. And let me tell you, just so happy that I did that. So half marathon, teaching offsite and out of state. And then I also agreed to the speaking engagement. Okay, see what I just said to you? A lot of the folks that come to me here will say, Chef, that's what you do. You speak. That's who you are. Oh, no, that's who I am in this building. Outside of here, the concept of a public speaking engagement is in my top 3 of most frightening things I could do to myself. And on top of it, I was going to make a little cornerstone of my speaking engagement, a topic that I've had some thoughts about and been a little frightened as a career chef to share. So it was like kind of a double whammy. Well, here's what happens. The pandemic, first of all, I run the first half marathon. Woo! I wanted to do things that were out of my comfort zone. So I just want to share with you that if you would like to be uncomfortable, you should run a half marathon because that was really uncomfortable. Actually, it was fine. I trained well for it and it was a lot of fun and I've never run another one. I got that off the list. The pandemic hits and it cancels my second marathon. Dang. But it also pushes back this speaking engagement. Like, oh gosh, I mean, it pushed it back a year and a half in the end, I think, 18 months or something. But my 2 North Carolina teaching gigs still went on. So I got through those hurdles. And I'm telling you, that was scary for me for whatever reason. The human mind is a strange thing. Got through those and I met some incredible women up there. So what a huge joy. What a payoff for having powered through that fear, right? But the other thing is that 18-month delay in the speaking engagement gave me time to come to terms with the fact that I have a voice and I'm willing to share it. I know what I'm about to share may not be popular. I'm going to put it that way. But I'm here to give you my thoughts. What I'll say about this YouTube channel is that I open it to you. Please, let's have a discussion about this when this gets rolling. Put some comments and let's talk about it. We'll start in the past and come to the future. I showed you in Ms. Beaton's some food presentation. Remember the colored plates? If you haven't seen that episode, the Ms. Beaton's episode, I highly recommend you take a look because she's the beginning of also modern recipe writing as we know it. Remember I told you she's the one who actually put together the concept of columns of ingredients with steps that those ingredients show up in order. That's just not how recipes were written prior to 1865. So we owe her that. But I want to take a look at these plates again, these presentations. Remember I showed you guys some of these? So this is circa 1865, which means we're coming into the beginning of a little nouveau riche period that's at 1865. We're just shy of 100 years since the French Revolution, okay? That's important to know because for a big spell up until this moment, wealth was not highly revered, right? Ask Marie Antoinette how popular being super wealthy was. She's going to come up a lot in today's discussion. So this kind of nouveau riche is showing up. We talked a little bit in the Miss Beaton's episode about the burgeoning upper middle class and the city development that's happening. People are moving away from farmsteads and into cities. This upper middle class is showing up. And one of the things that's happening is a return to some really elaborate food presentations. And what I want to say about these pages is if you go back into historical food volumes and look back, you're going to see versions Certainly some of these feel like Marie Antoinette. I already told you that was 100 years ago from this publication, right? We can go back 300 years from this presentation and look at Henry VIII's table and see something very similar to these pages here, right? Very similar. The thing about food presentation, in this format, what it's meant for is statement making. As you can see, this doesn't look super enticing to eat, does it? I feel like if I'm the person who pulls that cherry off of that, right, I'm in trouble. I don't know if any of this was meant to be eaten. Do you? This is what we're going to start diving into. Everything old is new again. It's all fashion, right? It just keeps coming back around. Have you bought some bell bottoms lately? They're coming back, girl. What's happening? Everything old is new again. Food in this presentation is meant to make a statement. It is not meant to nourish you. Although if you ate these cherries, they would have some vitamin C and some B and some antioxidants. The fact is, in this presentation, these cherries are about saying, I've got enough money to hire a crew to put these cherries together in this way and set them on this very expensive platter and put them on my very expensive table. These cherries aren't about eating cherries. These cherries are about a statement of who I am, who my household is, who my husband is, what our economy is. Henry VIII certainly used food in the same way. Those elaborate, huge banquet hall buffets. He also, by the way, was truly feeding about 2,500 people a day. It was essentially a working hotel, wasn't it? The Kensington Palace. But let's move ahead 200 years to Marie Antoinette. And if you think about images of movies, period dramas, certainly any books that you've seen, illustrations, drawings, paintings, you have some image. If you've ever toured Versailles, which I have, and it's just so cool to do, you would certainly have an image of that same idea, right? Those just towers of seafood and pastry that just look untouchable. If you guys saw the movie Amadeus, right? Remember the opening scene in Amadeus when he's at the wedding and Salieri sneaks into the dessert buffet and is plucking desserts off? Those types of presentations. So here's the thing about those foods. Like I said, in Henry VIII's court, Marie Antoinette's court, in Miss Beaton's 1860 household in the up-and-coming middle upper class neighborhoods of London, wherever it may be, those statement foods, those statement presentations, what they're designed to do is tell you something about either you, who are one of the few that's been invited to imbibe in this, or about the person who has provided it and what it says about them. As we move through to, let's say, the mid-20th century, so the 1950s, and I'm going to hang here in America because it's where my food history is probably the most tied in. An interesting change starts happening with food, and we start to move into a world of looking for convenience. The 1950s is when we start to see prepackaged food, and we start to see oven-ready dinners and prepared foods, canned foods take off in a way they never have. We have freezer space and refrigeration in a way we never have. So a total different spin in the 50s. In the 60s and 70s, our moms go into revolt mode, and it is SpaghettiOs for dinner, kid, right? Like, she's not cooking a 5-course meal all day. That's over. And what we started to see happen with every turn, you know, the fashions trend out and they trend out. And somewhere and then in the 90s, we go into that fat-free devastation of a Sahara desert of life. The early 90s were some of the worst culinarily speaking that I can think of. Just terrifying times. Those were in my world, that was the world of fat-free everything. That's when I ate lean cuisines and healthy. It was all fat-free and super sweet because it was loaded with high fructose corn syrup. Then we move into 2000s and we start to see this revolution. What's happened at El Bulli in Spain with this sort of molecular gastronomy, this higher end presentation, starts to eke its way across the ocean and into America. And we start seeing it in some of the high end hotels. Again, Thomas Keller opens up French Laundry, and his presentations weren't quite as molecularly gastronomical. It wasn't so scientific so much as it was just kind of a reworking. Thomas Keller is the one who took a pot of vegetables called ratatouille, which is veggie stew, and turned it into the ratatouille that you're thinking of right now, which is all those beautiful vegetables stacked in a spiral, in a casserole. The ratatouille of the cartoon movie Ratatouille, that ratatouille was based on Thomas Keller's ratatouille. So it was a reworking of it. It was really beautiful and exceptionally elegant. And it continues on. And before we know it, this insane page of highly presentable cherries in a ring, in a stack, coated with aspic that are essentially there for appearance more than anything, it starts to make a resurgence, doesn't it? And all of a sudden, we start to see the new gastronomy. Restaurants like Alinea open up. Wiley Dufresne opens up WD 50. And we start to see some really interesting things happening with food. I'm going to show you a few photographs from this book first. First, I'll show you Grant Achatz because I think it's so cute. It's a good-looking guy. Check out. This book is so heavy. Look out. That's Grant. Now, in this photograph, you can see he actually was recovering from throat cancer. You can see he's very trim in this. He is still very trim, but he's thinner in this than he is now, and I think it had to do with that throat cancer. Let's talk about some photographs in here that give you an idea of sort of his concepts about food. He has a page in here called How to Use This Book. If you're going to use this book, I'd read it because I'm going to show you some ingredients here in a minute. But I'm going to get to some of my flagged pages. Cucumber gelée. So I assume this would be a palate cleanser between courses. Maybe it would be served as a second course or a salad. Cucumber gelée. Let's just look at this photo and look at how pretty this is. Look at that. Pretty, right? So it's just this neon green, chartreuse green, clear gelée of cucumber. It's got some Bali sea salt, cayenne pepper, and powdered citric acid as a little garnish. This is a orange sassafras cream with a mandarin pudding and mandarin capsules. I have no idea what that means. Let's look at it. It's just pretty. Oh, this book, Grant, I tell you. Right? Beautiful. I don't really know what it is, but it's gorgeous. So he reworks some things in a way that I think are pretty fun here. Here's another one of these. Here's a salad. This is pretty cool little reworking. So it's got some microgreens and some shaved, like finely shaved baby cucumber and celery. And there's a Maytag blue blue cheese, like gelatin. I don't know. There's just all this. This is a salad. This is Grant's idea of a salad. Really beautiful, right? And I'm sure that each little pop, it's just incredible flavor. I want to show you real quick. I want to talk for a minute about some ingredients that Grant used to create some of these alphabetically. Agar, calcium lacetate, carrageenan, citric acid, jelly and gum, gelatin, glucose, glycerin, guar gum, hydrocolloid, invert sugars, lactic acid, malic acid, pectin, potassium citrate, propylene glycol alginate. So, right? Let's see, sodium alginate, sodium citrate, sorbitol, soy lecithin, xanthan gum. Yep. So there's some ingredients. Just FYI, if you get a recipe from me, my ingredients are going to be flour, eggs, salted butter, and salt. But I'm simple, y'all. Okay. This type of thing I want to talk about for a minute because I think this is both very exciting, and now we're going to start moving into the part of this discussion that I told you I have a little fear about, but here I go. Okay, check this out. What is this, by the way? Orange confit with muscovado candy and spun sugar. So it's a dessert. Okay. If Marie Antoinette were to ask for a dessert today, I have a feeling she'd be happy with this. I have a feeling that Marie Antoinette would understand the spun sugar on a bite of orange gelée. The thing about food as art, and I want to start by saying Grant Achatz is an artist. He is a chef, he is a scientist, and he is an artist. What he is presenting here is artwork. And as long as I appreciate his artistry, I will always appreciate this book and his vision because I do appreciate art. I'm a great lover of art and any expression, whether I understand it entirely or not, is of great value to be exposed to someone else's expression. Whether you get it or not, it doesn't matter. Art is expression, and I love it. And I love the artistic side of what's happening in this. The food side of what's happening here is the thing that's always made me uncomfortable. So here's the part of the talk that gets a little bit controversial. And here I go, breaking through some fear zones to just share with you some things. When I first was exposed to this style of cooking, I was trying desperately to get a catering business off the ground, my private chef business off the ground, my culinary teaching business off the ground. And I was in my early 30s. And I will say that I also, because I was so new at what I was doing, I just didn't have an enormous threshold of confidence or enormous pool of confidence to dive into. I was very new at what I was doing. I had faith in myself. I powered through. I got a lot done. But when I was presented with this style of food, what I want to say is that the first and foremost gut instinct that I had was one of discomfort. And I read that for a long time as that the discomfort was coming from a place of feeling less valuable because this was not something that I was producing. The discomfort went deeper. I didn't have a lot of faith in my ability to create something like what Grant Achatz was creating here. But further, I was concerned because I didn't have any real interest in creating anything like this either. And I genuinely wondered, in my heart of hearts, quietly behind the scenes, if that somehow was an indicator that I was not truly qualified to be in this field. My take on food is so simple, and I'm not interested in taking it to this level. And I wondered at the time if the lack of drive to be the next Thomas Keller or to be the next Grant Achatz was somehow an indicator that I was really not cut out for this field. I wasn't good enough. Over time, and my miraculous 40th birthday, and things start to change, and I find my feet, and I find my legs, and I get more confident with who I am and what I'm sharing and what I'm producing. I thought a lot about the discomfort when I see this style food. I went to Catbird Seat, and I ate their incredible dinner, and watching their staff work that night and perform that night was just really a joy. And it was amazing to watch people producing something, again, that was art as much as it was food. I did a lot of thinking about that discomfort, though, and what was at the core of it. And what was at the core of it in the end was, one, my own personal taste. Let's just start with the simplest thing. You like Brooks and I like Nike. I mean, we all have our own taste in this world. I don't think we have to defend them. My own personal taste is that I'm far more interested in going out for a killer double-decker burger with bacon and the crispiest French fries we can find than I am in this style dining. Life is challenging and exhausting, and I like my eating experiences to be neither of those things. I like for my eating experiences to be juicy and delicious and simple. And so this type of food, one, just inherently didn't really appeal to me. That's the truth. But I could hear in the back of my head my colleagues or others who, I don't know, those voices in the back of your head saying, nonsense. You can't say that's not appealing. You're just not smart enough for it, or you're just not good enough to understand it. Maybe there was that in there too. So I continued to think about the discomfort factor. I'm going to spin off here slightly. We'll come back to it. So there was a show on, and I'm just naming names here because frankly, it's just you and me, right? So I'm just going to be honest. There was a show that came on. I'm drinking some rose hibiscus tea today, and it is delicious. I hope you have something nice to drink for this. This cup keeps it really hot. Oh, that's so good. I loved Alton Brown. I love the Alton Brown productions of the original Alton Brown shows. I mean, he used Muppets. Come on, man. You're speaking my language when he got a Muppet on the stage. I adored Alton Brown. I loved the food science behind it. He introduced me to so many interesting scientific concepts behind food that really spun off how I teach today. So thank you, Alton Brown. I really loved his show. And then he was off air for a while. And then I really wasn't a big Food Network watcher. For one thing, I don't watch a lot of TV, and you can imagine I don't watch a ton of food TV when I'm at home. But I saw that he had a new show coming out. And so I popped it on to take a look at it. And it turned out that he wasn't cooking. He was a game show host in this particular setting. And the episode that I watched a few minutes of, I don't know if it was their premiere episode. I really don't remember. But the concept was that chefs are presented with food products on the spot. And on the spot, they have to create something wonderful with that item. And so the first thing that came out, it was like a conveyor belt or a trolley or something. And out comes filet mignon. So filet of beef, like beautiful, right? That's gorgeous. Okay, this will be great. And so they all get this filet of beef and what are we going to do with the beef? And the next thing that came out on the trolley were bags of Skittles. You know, the candy, the rainbow candy, Skittles. And I turned off the TV. And I didn't tell anybody about that experience until I was here one day, and I mentioned it to some students in one of my classes. And one of them said to me exactly what that little fear voice thought someone might say to me. He said, "Get off your high horse." And I thought, okay, I'm going to get off my high horse and not talk about this again. Let me tell you what the problem was for me with that. The discomfort that I tend to feel when I look at these highly deconstructed, very elitist, very limited accessibility food presentation situations, whether they be restaurants, pop-ups, art books, is that is dangerous territory. Food is not to be taken for granted as human beings. And it is certainly not a game, and it is certainly not a toy. And I think that the discomfort for me comes when I see that there is, in some fractions of our society, so much abundance that we can literally play games with this product, play games with it, while in my zip code, right here, there are people who are relying on public school systems lunch program for their only meal of the day. And when I shared that concept in that class, I was told to get off my high horse, and it stung because it does sound really haughty. And also I wasn't 40 yet, so I didn't have any legs yet. And so I did stay off my high horse. I never brought it up again. But the concept that a cow has died to provide us 2 fillets of beef, that's what you find on a cow. And that this network was going to take that product and play with it to the point where they were going to add candy to the show, lousy candy at that, I might add, was very unappealing to me. But more importantly, it was one of the most uncomfortable things I ever saw in my life. And it took me a long time to really come to terms with the idea that I wasn't uncomfortable because if I had been on that game show, I wouldn't have known what to do with filet and Skittles. It was the abundance and it was the game playing with a product that is still so greatly missing from so many. I feel like the reason this food is not of appeal to me is in part because my attraction to food has always been about comfort and about nourishment. I love the way that it makes me feel when I have a full belly. I love the way that it makes me feel when I share food with people I care about. I love looking at my refrigerator when it's full. I mean, not like full, like green veggies, and I can see beautiful colors from the produce bin. And there's some treats in the pantry, and there's bread on my counter. And that feeling of abundance is so lovely to me. That's what I love about food. And so to take it down this rabbit hole and deconstruct it and xanthan gum it and pipe it and foam it and fuzz it and throw it at a guest in a powdered format and ask them to inhale gently with smoke, you're taking it to a place that doesn't mean anything to me. And it makes me uncomfortable. And it doesn't make me uncomfortable because I can't appreciate the artistic expression, because I assure you I do. And Alinea is one of the most beautiful books I've ever owned. The photography is breathtaking. And I have every Thomas Keller book as well. They're beautiful. They're coffee table books. I often just open them up and just leave them sitting on the coffee table on one of his gorgeous presentations. So I am in no way condemning those who have found this venue as a way to express themselves. In no way. What I am sharing with you today is why it makes me uncomfortable. And if it makes you uncomfortable and you've wondered why that is, if you are one of my colleagues who has been so happy making double-decker bacon burgers at your place and wondered if you were ever supposed to try to graduate to this next level, what I share with you today, I hope alleviates some of that stress for you, because the answer is no, it is not for everybody. The other thing that I will mention about the discomfort is that this round, this 2000s and up, this El Bulli, Alinea, Catbird Seat, WD-50, this round, Noma in, where is Noma? Norway? This is the Noma cookbook. Noma. This round of what I'm going to refer to as the Marie Antoinette showcasing of foods, I don't think is honestly terribly dangerous. I think for the few who can afford it, for the few who can make a reservation a year and a half in advance and fly to another country to experience this dining, good for them. That's great. I don't feel like those places took from others to create this. It's their own doing and their own platform, and they have their own client base. I don't think they've put any harm in our society by creating these things. But my discomfort in it is inherent. And it is inherent because for our history as human beings, up until this version of this, that level of taking something that should be a staple fundamental for all, moving it to an elitist, exclusive level, and when we get it there, playing with it and using it to showcase wealth and not even using it to nourish. In the history of the human experience, that has only ever led to revolution. I don't think that Grant Achatz is going to start a civil war. I dig what he's doing. I think Thomas Keller is a peacemaker, not a war maker. But what I'm here to say about that discomfort is that when we dig down into our feelings about things and we really listen to our gut instinct about what's happening with it, we break away from that jerk who told me that I was on a high horse, or we break away from our own creepy little fear voices that want to drive us away from saying something that we believe. When we break away from that and get honest with ourselves about what something is making us feel, if this is art, then I'm allowed to have emotion. That's what it's supposed to do, right? Isn't art supposed to bring out an emotion? Art can bring out fury and tears and joy. Well, this art, this expression, brings out an inherent discomfort in me, and I understand what it stems from now. And it isn't about my inadequacies, and it isn't about my failure to understand this food and what's happening with it. It is about the human experience and what nutrition means to us as people, and that it is so fragile still today. We are not in a place where this planet has this level of abundance. There are a very, very few that can play with their food. And so there's the discomfort. Now, what I will say is these books are interesting. They are fun to look at. The first one I pulled up for you guys is this Modernist Cuisine. Look at this guy. My buddy Dennis and I think, are the only two that have copies of these in St. Johns County. They're huge. By the way, if you live here and you want to come check these out, swing by the studio. You're always welcome to take a look at them. This book, here's something. Talk about the art. I mean, this is cool. He breaks down barbecue sauces, right? Region, mustard base, sweet, smoky, Alabama white. Look at that. Look at all those mops. I mean, the photographs in this book, incredible. And what an incredible collection. If you are a lover of the art of food, and if you are a lover of the art of food presentation, check this page out with this smoking lobster. Look at this. It's so gorgeous. Can you see that? I mean, this is incredible. What an incredible time in food to see somebody build this lab, create this photography, deconstruct these foods, bring out the medical equipment to start completely changing the way we see a flavor, a texture, or a profile on something. It's very exciting. And it's also relatively dangerous. And it also does not have legs. One thing I can tell you about this style food is it's going away, man. It will not last. It isn't sustainable. Even as an artist, I don't think it's sustainable to maintain a restaurant that does this style of food for very long. Of all the food history that we have going on, we can go back to Henry VIII. And while he did elaborate pies and he did elaborate presentations and he put out too much food, right? That was his, if we're going to talk about food crimes, his was that he just put this abundance out. A lot of it was wasted. And of course, Marie Antoinette lost her head for that. That's not a joke. That's exactly why that happened. But if I'm really honest, Ina Garten's roast chicken, that's what I want for dinner. That is so beautiful. Look at the onions in sauce. Oh, God, that is so delish. This is from Barefoot. How easy is that? Isn't she precious? Ina. Remarkable cook and makes the food I want to eat. We saw Grant's salad, right? Here's what I like. I know what that is. I know how to eat that. Roasted zucchini, bell peppers, and fennel with sprigs of thyme, salt and pepper. Yep. I understand that. That I understand. Do you know what's on the back of this book? Boop. You know what I'm saying? Right? That's what I want to eat. Have faith in who you are. Listen to your voice. you know what you have to say. Share some remarkably good food with somebody and make it simple because that's what we all really want. And I'm going to read for you. We're going to have a little reading session. I'm going to read a little excerpt from you from the first. I would say this is the closest thing to food writing that was my first experience in the world of food writing. This book, copyright 1961. I got my copy in 1979 from the Scholastic Book Services. Have something warm to drink. I'm going to read to you for a minute. When noon came, some of the children went home for lunch. Those who stayed had to wash their hands and get their lunch boxes from their lockers. They had to go back to their seats and eat. There was no cafeteria in Charlie's school. Mrs. Gay went to the teacher's room to eat her lunch, and everyone was supposed to be good while she was gone. When lunch was over, you could go to the gym or the playground to play. Charlie washed his hands. He got his lunchbox from his locker and took it back to his seat. He opened the lunchbox and took out a paper napkin to spread on his desk. Then he saw Rosabelle, the new girl, coming back to her seat. So, he thought, she's going to stay for lunch too. Everybody began eating and talking. Charlie had a sandwich wrapped in wax paper. He unwrapped it and looked at the filling. Peanut butter, his favorite kind. There was an apple in his lunchbox too. Oh, and an oatmeal cookie. Well, it was all just as usual, a sandwich and milk and some sort of fruit and some sort of cookie. But all the others had about the same things in their lunchboxes too. Then Charlie looked at Rosabelle. She was spreading out a napkin on her desk too, but it wasn't a paper one. It was a real one, a cloth one. What more, Rosabelle took another napkin out of her lunchbox and spread it on her lap. Then she took out something wrapped in silver foil. Charlie stared. It was a drumstick of fried chicken. Next, she unscrewed her thermos bottle and poured out, not milk, but hot tomato soup. Charlie could see it was piping hot. Rosabelle sat nibbling at the chicken leg and sipping tomato soup. She didn't talk to anybody because she was new. Charlie decided that after lunch, he would speak to her. When Rosabelle finished the chicken leg and the soup, she took a spoon and a glass jar out of her lunchbox. Charlie could see what was in the glass jar. It was fruit salad. Rosabelle ate all of it. Charlie wondered if there could be anything else in her lunchbox. There was. It was a piece of chocolate layer cake with inches of icing. It was wrapped in silver foil, too. Charlie had never seen anything that looked more delicious. Rosabelle finished the cake down to the last crumb. You know, me and Rosabelle, me and Charlie, we got a lot in common. I am really impressed with a cold fried chicken leg and some chocolate cake and hot tomato soup. This is from my favorite and original and first time ever food-related book, and it is called What's for Lunch, Charlie? And even today, with all of the amazing food that certainly my crew and I have prepared, look at Rosabelle and Charlie. Look, you see her eating her chicken leg? He's over there with his peanut butter sandwich. It's so cute. With all the remarkable food that my crew and I have put out for chef table dinners here over the years, at the end of the day, you want to know what my customers tell me they love more than anything? It's our tomato soup. It's our roasted turkey. It's Chef Greg's green beans with cashews in cast iron. That's it, right? So that's it. That's what I have to share with you on Cookbook Corner today. A few of my newest cookbooks, some of the newest concepts in food, and I share with you my thoughts about it. I would love to get a conversation started here about this topic. And I thank you for joining me today, as always. And I hope you'll subscribe and like us here on YouTube. We'd love to have you with us for future Cookbook Corners. We'll keep on going. Let's see. Yeah, let's just get the conversation going. Meanwhile, I hope you guys are having an absolutely delicious day, and I hope you'll make something nourishing and satisfying and simple for dinner this weekend. All right, guys, have a great one. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you soon.